Good morning. Good morning. So we're into the fall now, and it looks like it's going to be beautiful weather this week, and I'm starting a new series. It's going to be for 4 weeks, and I'm going to do something I really haven't done before. I'm going to focus on this series on men. Okay. And then in 4 weeks after that, I'm going to focus mainly on women. Okay? All right. And so I'm going to look first at the story of Samson for the guys, and then the story of Ruth. And so today we're on Samson, which is the forgotten story. You know, it's tough being a guy. Things have changed, and a lot of times, you know, things don't work out like you plan. Did you hear about a woman whose husband died, and he left her a special account, $50,000 to cover all the funeral? And after the funeral was over with, the widow tells her closest friend, there is no money left. And the widow said, wow, you went through $50,000 for the funeral? She said, yep. And she said, well, what did it go for? He said, well, the funeral home cost me about $6,500. And then I made donation to the church, to the organist and the pastor. That was about $500. I spent $500 on the food and drinks after the funeral. And the rest went to the memorial stone. And the friend says, $42,500 for the memorial stone? How big was it? And the widow said, about 3 carats. Guys have it tough today in many ways. Many people know the story of Samson as the children's kind of version of the story. You learn it in VBS, Vacation Bible School, and Samson and who? Delilah. In fact, they made a movie about it. And so as we begin here, this is an old movie. I'm going to show a clip of what the movie was about, and then we're going to continue on. So this is, Victor Mature was the star. That shows you how old it is. Bert, if you click on the middle of that picture, it'll work. There we go.
Now relive the colossal drama of the mightiest colossus that ever lived. Samson and Delilah, the immortal story of the strongest man in all history. A masterpiece of big screen entertainment. Samson, who alone and unafraid challenged and defeated the most dreaded army of his time. His daring exploits have become legend. The lion of the desert he fought with his bare hands. See as he saw the orgies of barbaric pagans that roused his vengeful fury. But Samson was ensnared by the seductive beauty of Delilah.
Daughter of hell.
His lust became a trap that led to his downfall and capture. Enchained, he was tortured and blinded. Here is the most spectacular scene of destruction ever filmed. Samson using his incredible strength to bring down the Temple of Dagon in crashing ruins.
Okay, that's enough of that. I wonder how many of you saw that movie in the movie theater when it came out? You guys have been around a long time. You seen that? A lot of what we know about the Samson story, though, is like a children's story for many people. They don't really know the details about it. It is in the book of Judges. Now, a little bit about Judges is Judges 13 through 16. So if you want to know the whole story of Samson, read chapters 13 through 16, 3 chapters. All you guys should read it a few times this next few weeks, just to be really familiar with it. So what is the book of Judges about? It's in Judges. The name itself is a little misleading. We think of a judge as somebody in a courtroom with a gavel, and they have a jury, and the judge presides over the courtroom. That's not the kind of judges in the Bible in the book of Judges. They were tribal chiefs, okay? They were people who helped Israel to become back in control in the Holy Land and the region God had given them, and they were like chieftains in the area. There were 13 of them in the book of Judges. It goes from the time period when, you remember, Moses led the children out of Israel, and then Joshua led them into the promised land and conquered the land. For the next several hundred years, they had these judges that ruled before Saul, the first king of Israel, and then David the king. So that time period between Joshua and Saul was a time when these 13 different tribal leaders ruled in this area in what we think of today as Palestine. So just to ask you a question, were any of the judges women? Yes. There was. Deborah was a woman. But we're looking at one that we have probably more written about than any of them, Samson, who you probably know the story of Samson and Delilah, about how that, he had great strength and she cut his hair and he lost his strength. Okay? Well, there's a whole lot more to it than that. Samson was an incredibly strong man with a dangerously weak will. And I think this is still a problem for men today. And so I'm asking this question, and I'm going to look at the answers. What makes strong men weak? Because we have a lot of weak men. They look strong. You may look strong. You may look like you're all together. But if you look deeply into their lives and what's going on in their lives, they're actually not. And so this account of this man begins with his parents. In Judges chapter 13, it's got again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord. So in the time of Judges, you would have a judge come and restore Israel in charge, and then they would turn against God. They would take other gods and worship them. And so the Philistines or whatever other group was around at the time would defeat them. And so this is one of those times when they were living in defeat, and the Lord delivered them into the hands of the Philistines for 40 years. Somebody asked me one time, who was bigger, Goliath, who was a Philistine, or Samson? You have any idea? Well, it talks about how big Goliath is. Goliath's like 9 feet tall. He's really big. It doesn't talk about Samuel being big. Samuel had superhuman strength when the Lord came upon him and gave that to him like a superpower. And it happened at different times in his life. So in Judges 13:1, the Israelites did evil. They were under bondage from Philistines. And a certain man of Zor named Manoah, that is Samson's dad, Manoah. You know what his mother's name was? Trick question, nobody does. Never says her name. If you read the first chapter 13, you'll find out that she was a lot smarter than her husband. Named Manoah was her husband, from the clan of the Danites, and he had a wife who was childless, unable to give birth. This is a common theme in stories in the Old Testament, that you had a woman who could not have children. There was Abraham and Sarah. There's others. And this was happening to Samson's parents. She could not give birth. And the angel of the Lord appeared to her like it did Mary, like it did Elizabeth, Sarah. You are barren and childless, but you're going to become pregnant and give birth to a son. Now see to it that you drink no wine or fermented drink, so that you do not eat anything unclean. And you will become pregnant, and you'll have a son whose head is never to be touched by a razor, because the boy is to be a Nazirite, dedicated to God from the womb, and he will take the lead as a judge, as a tribal chief, in delivering Israel from the hands of the Philistines. Now, it starts out talking about how his mom and him will be followers of Nazirite vows. Nazirite vows are in the Old Testament, Numbers chapter 6, and many times it was for a certain period, certain duration, that people would take these Nazirite vows who were not priests, but people who wanted to be close to God, to follow God. And so the angel says to her, I want you to take these vows while you're carrying him, and then his whole life, he's supposed to live like this. Now, what did it involve? Number one, it involved no drinking alcohol. Nope, you don't do it. Lord said to Moses, speak to the Israelites in Numbers 6 and say to them, if a man or woman wants to make a special vow, a vow of dedication to the Lord as a Nazirite, they must abstain from wine and other fermented drink, must not drink vinegar made from wine or fermented drink. They must not drink grape juice or eat grapes or raisins. As long as they remain under the Nazirite vow, they must not eat anything that comes from the grapevine, not even the seeds or skins. No Coronas, no margaritas with your Mexican food, no martinis, nothing. Do not drink it. Do you think that Samson did this? No, sometimes. That's his problem. 2, if you're a Nazirite, you're not supposed to touch anything dead. Don't touch anything dead. If it's dead, don't touch it. That would be an easy one for me to do. I don't want to touch anything dead anyway. Throughout the period of their dedication to the Lord, it says in Numbers 6:6, the Nazirite must not go near a dead body, animal or people. And the third thing, don't cut your hair. No cutting your hair. This is your head, your facial hair. Numbers 6:5, during the entire period of the Nazirite vow, no razor may be used on their head. They must be holy until the period of their dedication to the Lord is over. They must let their hair grow long. Somebody asked me, does that mean they can have a mullet? I said, no. Mullets are bad. They were bad in 1980s. They're still bad. But this guy, he had the hair, long beard. The purpose of it was when somebody saw somebody that had that long hair, they knew that this person has dedicated themselves to God. It was an outward sign of what's going on inside their life. We had baptisms a couple of weeks ago. One of the reasons we do that is to make an outward profession of what's going on inwardly, spiritually. And so these people who were taking vows, you could know it by their hair being really long. Now, the attitudes that make strong men weak. That's what I want to talk about. Samson had an incredible gift. The strength that he had, he could have done so much with it. If you look at some of the other judges, they not only they were leaders. They weren't just people who were just strong men. If you look at Samson's life, he basically used his super strength, but he never rallied people around him. He never raised an army. He never got people to change and turn back to God like he could have. But he had many problems, but 3 of the problems I want to look at today, which are still true, by the way. Strong men become weak today because of these same problems, and I want to look at them. 1 is lust. 2 is entitlement. and 3 is pride. Let's talk about the first one, lust. Well, what is lust? Well, it's pretty evident. Lust is this desire that you want something and you got to have it. You say, I want it. I want it. This is the way he felt. He felt strongly that he wanted something and he needed to have it. And it says in Judges 14:1, Samson went down to Timnah. That's 4 miles away from his hometown. And that was a center of Philistines. And he saw there a young Philistine woman. He just saw her, didn't doctor her, just saw her. Love at first sight, or you might call it lust at first sight. She was easy on the eyes. Something about her. He saw her. He returned to his mom and dad, his father, mother. He said, I've seen this woman in Timnah. Now get her for me as my wife. You know, he is kind of commanding his parents to do this. He sees, he wants. Even though that she's a Philistine and he knows as Israelite, you are not supposed to intermarry with the Philistines' women. Didn't stop him, didn't slow him down. He sees it, he wants it. Okay? And so his father and mother, argues with him, say, isn't there an acceptable woman among your relatives? Which is really a weird statement, actually. But in their culture, I guess, is different. Or among all our people, is there any other women? There's some pretty good looking women here. Why do you have to go to that town? And must you go to the uncircumcised Philistines to get a wife? Samson did not listen. He did not pay attention to his parents. He says, get her for me. She's the right one for me. And so he has this desire. He wants it, and he is going to do everything he can to get it. And today, that is a weakness that men have. They see it, they desire it. And I know for you, it might not be women, guys. It might be, I don't know. I have a weakness sometimes for food, believe it or not. I went to play golf with a guy here in the church. And I was running late, and I didn't eat lunch, and I had a little bag of white donuts in the car with me. And so he even still tells me, he says, I've never seen anybody come to play golf with a bag of white donuts. It's temptations we have. We all have our temptations. The buttons that how good are you at resisting? Saying no. This young man, he let this get it better of him. Second, a spirit of entitlement. He basically, I work hard. I deserve it. I've earned this. I can do this. Judges 14:5-6 says, Samson went down to Timnah together with his father and mother. Okay? And so he has got this plan together. He wants to go down there. He keeps bugging them. You ever seen a young person bug a parent about something? I need a car. I need a car. You going to give me a car? We're going to give my car? Sometimes somebody can bug you so much you just do it. my son John and his wife Alyssa, she's decided they wanted that she wanted a dog. And so she just kept telling everybody, we're getting a dog in August. We're getting a dog in August. She sent me a picture yesterday. They got a dog. He keeps bugging his parents. He wants this girl, wants a girl. So he goes down to Timnah with his dad and mom to get that girl. And as they approach the vineyards of Timnah, suddenly a young lion, not a wore out lion, a young lion comes roaring toward him. The Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him, maybe the first time in his life, I don't know. He tore the lion apart with his bare hands. I can't imagine doing that. As he might have torn a young goat. Now, I've never torn a goat. Maybe cut up a chicken, okay? He tore it apart. He told neither his father or his mother what he'd done. Now, we can roll through this part, but I don't know any of us have seen a lion other than a zoo. But a wild animal that's dangerous is a scary thing. And I don't know what you get scared of. I remember when I was young, when I was in seminary, I was staying with this family in Frankfort, Kentucky on the weekends. I was youth minister at this church, and they let me stay in the basement. And the basement was rough, okay, in their house. It was kind of a lot of rock, and they didn't have heat down there, so I had a coal furnace I used to put coal in. And one night I went down there I got there late, and I turned on the light, and a bat started flying around that basement. And I'm 50% sure I didn't say a cuss word. But I thought it. And I hit that floor, okay? And I'm thinking, what am I going to do? So I go upstairs, and the people in the house were asleep, and so I woke them up. And, the husband said, oh, all right, what is it? What is it? Oh, yeah, a bat. And so he came down there, and he walked in the room, and that thing flew and hit him in the head, and he slammed on the floor, and he said, there's a bat in there. And so he had all this hockey equipment, and we put it on. We tried to catch the bat. Did not work. My heart was a-beating, and his wife opened all the doors and the windows, and it flew out. But he faced this dangerous animal, but a super strength came on him, and he fought this thing. And I imagine it gave him some confidence, probably, maybe some pride, I don't know. But it says sometime later, when he went back to marry, he still got his mind set on this woman. He turned aside to look at the lion's carcass, and in it, he saw a swarm of bees and some honey. You ever had a honeycomb, fresh honey on your biscuit? Oh, warm, it's good. And he looked at it and he thought, I want it. And so he scooped out the honey with his hands and he ate it. I was walking, kind of like a man's thing to do, isn't it? And when he rejoined his parents, he gave some to them. They too ate it, but he did not tell them where he'd gotten it. He'd taken it from the lion's carcass. Now, two things I want to say about this. First of all, that's nasty. Eating some out of a dead animal. Second, he wasn't supposed to touch dead things. And honestly, sometimes guys, we do things that people would say, why'd you do that? Sometimes guys are nasty. And he wasn't supposed to eat the dead thing or touch the dead thing. He touched it and he ate out of it. This entitlement. And then the third thing he had in his heart and in his life was a spirit of pride. Maybe the strength he had gave him pride, that he knew that he had this unbelievable strength. He could destroy the lion, and he knew that he was called, and he had long hair and long beard and felt like a rebel and said, I want that woman. Get her for me. I want what I want. And it says in 14:10, now his father went down to see the woman, and there in Timnah, which, by the way, remember there's a vineyard there in Timnah, he held a feast, as was customary for the young men. So in their weddings, they would have these big feasts as part of the wedding. We still do it today, a lot of weddings. In fact, now you have the rehearsal dinner that's a feast, and then you have the party after the wedding that's a feast. It lasts at least 2 days for a lot of people in our culture today. In that day, the feast was named a mishta in Hebrew, and it actually meant a party, a celebration which had a lot of drinking. He wasn't supposed to touch dead things. Now he started this keg party. He's going to be drinking. He's not doing the vows. He's just not doing it because he imagines himself strong enough or good enough or righteous enough. You know, I'm asking today for all of the guys today, and for all of us really. Samson was a strong guy. Maybe you look at yourself as a strong guy. Maybe you drive a truck. You know, you're a man's man. Ford F-150. There you go. That doesn't make you strong, because God can make the weak strong, which is the opposite of what our culture teaches. It's absolutely true. When you are weak, that's when God can make you strong. What are some attitudes that make weak men strong? We looked at attitudes that make strong men weak. What makes weak men strong? First one, most important one, understanding deep in your life, in your heart, in your mind, I need God. Do you have that in your life? Or do you think, you know, I can do this. I can do this. I'm strong. I can do this. You know, it starts out with you recognizing that you need God. Now, we live in a culture today that does not teach this at all. Does not. And that's what the problem is. You know, in Samson's day, they had what one scholar called the Canaanization of Israel. What does that mean? That means Israel took on all the morals and values of the culture around them. They did things they shouldn't do. The morals for the Israelites were just like the Philistines. They couldn't tell the difference. Listen, I wonder if that's not going on right now in our world, in our country. Can you look at somebody and tell if they're a Christian or not by their morals, by what they do, how they act? And so the first thing to do is to say, okay, I do need God. Second, admit your weaknesses. Samson didn't do this. Samson didn't say, you know, she looks good, but I know that's not right for me. He didn't say, look at that honey, but you know, I'm not supposed to touch anything dead. So no, he just went on and did it. And so you have to be aware of your weaknesses. Everybody has weaknesses here. I don't know what they are for you, but you definitely have them. To admit them, you know, the Bible says all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. To admit them and not lean into them, not put yourself in situations where that is going to happen. And then third, to remind yourself every day, I can't handle anything without God. Do you know that to be true? It's not of your own strength. It's not of your own smarts or intelligence or your resources financially. You got to say to yourself, you know, I can't handle this without God. Samson did not do that. You know, Samson, at the end of his life, his eyes gouged out, nothing but dark sockets, his hair all cut off, his prized hair cut off, he's a laughing stock of everybody. Why did he wind up that way? Because he forgot this. He forgot these truths. Paul talks about this in Ephesians 6:10. Paul says, finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power, not in your own. Every man in here, if you want to be a strong man, you better be weak and trust in the power of God, not your own. 2 Corinthians, Paul said, but he said to me, my grace, God said to him, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in what? Weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses so that Christ's power may rest on me. Anyone who's strong today is because they know that they need God. They turn over their weaknesses to God and ask for him to give them strength. You know, I don't know where you are today. Maybe you have some things that you think, well, God can't forgive, God can't use that. And maybe you're agreeing with me on all these things, and you think, I just don't know. But God used everything Samson did. There was a plan behind everything. Judges 14:4, maybe the most important verse in the first 2 chapters for sure. It's this little verse that says, Samson's parents did not know that all this was from the Lord, who was seeking an occasion to confront the Philistines. And so even though Samson did what's wrong and eating from the lion and trying to marry this girl, the Lord used it all to confront the Philistines. And in the end, there were 20 years where Samson led the people of Israel out of bondage. And so God used his mistakes to do good things. Now, I'm not saying that means you should go ahead and do your mistakes, because God can use it. There are consequences to the choices we make, and this is what eventually causes Samson's demise, is the consequences that led to his choices. But I do know that whatever goes on in your life, God can use it to do good. God can use it to bless you and bless others, but it begins with this understanding that we need God. And we need the leadership of men who do this.